Hi and welcome back to TUPE. This is session 3, Tobacco 101. Today we're going to check in on your SMART goals as well as your nutrition logs. And then we're going to switch gears and talk about nicotine and tobacco and whether or not it really is that bad for our health. And then we'll take a closer look at what effects nicotine and tobacco have on our brains and on our bodies. So I want you to think a minute about the SMART goals that you set in our first session and whether or not you have been working towards those. Maybe you have forgotten completely about them, or maybe you've decided the goals you set aren't really that important to you and you want to set new goals. I highly encourage you, though, to keep working towards a SMART goal, especially during COVID-19 when we're home and may have some extra time on our hands. It can be super helpful to focus on the future and what direction you want your life to go once we're able to get back out into the world. I also want you to reflect upon tracking your nutrition. What did you like most about this activity? Did you like seeing how much activity you were getting every day? Did you like seeing the variety of foods you were eating? And what didn't you like? Maybe you didn't like any of it. Maybe it's easier to ignore your diet and your exercise than to think about it. But this can be really helpful just to have an accurate picture of your overall health in regards to food choices and to exercise. And were you surprised by anything that you saw with going over your logs? And finally, did you find any areas that you could improve? Most of us have lots of areas that we could improve our diets and our exercise amounts. And so this can be a good trick to use or tip to use throughout life if you feel like you're off track with either your nutrition or your exercise. So now we're going to do a little true-false activity to see how much you know about smoking and vaping before we get into the lesson. So if you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, you can jot down your answers along. Okay, the first one, true or false? Smoking kills thousands of people every year. Well, this is a little bit of a trick question. It's actually false because it doesn't kill thousands of people every year. It kills millions of people. Depending on the source and the statistic, up to 6 million people die every year from tobacco use. So that is a lot of people and a lot of preventable death. True or false? Most smokers begin as teens. Well, this is true. In fact, 90% of smokers began smoking before the age of 18. So what this means is that if somebody can get to the age of 18, having not started smoking or vaping, their chances of becoming smokers or vapors are very slim. In fact, many addictions begin before the age of 18, and part of the reason for that is because up until about the age of 25, our brains are still developing, which makes us more susceptible to any kind of addiction. True or false? Vaping is healthier than smoking. Well, I'm going to say false to this one, but this one is not completely a true or false type of question because the reality is we simply don't know the long-term health effects of vaping. And it's because it hasn't been around that long. The first vape pens came out in about 2008. So it was really only 12 years ago that vapes became available, and it wasn't until much more recently that they became mainstream and popular. What we do know, however, is that it is not a safe alternative to smoking. There are still thousands of chemicals in e-liquid, and we're going to look at that next week when we talk about vaping. But there's also nicotine, which is highly addictive, not to mention the fact that you're heating up a plastic device, and so the chemicals from the plastic device are also leaching into that and being inhaled into the lungs. True or false? Adults get addicted to nicotine, the drug and cigarettes, much more easily than teens. True or false? Well, that's false. Teens become addicted more easily and from smaller amounts of nicotine than adults. And actually, teens get addicted to anything more easily than adults, and it has to do with the fact that the brain is still developing. True or false? It's easy to quit smoking or vaping. Well, I'm guessing most of you know that that's false. Nicotine is highly addictive and very hard to quit. We are also seeing that now with vaping. that due to the high levels of nicotine, young people are getting addicted very quickly and having a really hard time stopping. And if you've ever known somebody who smokes, you probably know that they want to quit and aren't able to because it is so addictive. True or false? It is safe to use marijuana since it's a plant. That is something that I hear in just about every presentation that I give, that marijuana is natural, therefore there aren't any health risks with it. And that's actually quite false. Marijuana is a drug, and just like nicotine, it can lead to addiction, cancer, and affect brain development. True or false? More people die each year in car crashes than from smoking or smoking-related illnesses. This is false, and if you look at this chart here, it's really interesting to see that the cause of death here are in the thousands, and from this data, they have 430,000 people dying a year from smoking-related illnesses or smoking-related health problems. And if you look at the number of people who have died from AIDS, alcohol, car crashes, murder, drugs, or suicide, if you added all of those up, they wouldn't even come close to the number of people who are dying because of smoking addiction. Nicotine and marijuana are harmful to your health. So you may hear otherwise, but the facts are there that they are really harmful to our well-being. But the good news is that information is power, and that's one thing that I'm going to repeat throughout these sessions, that my goal with these classes is to give you the factual information so that when you're faced with the decisions of whether or not you want to try smoking, vaping, or marijuana, you will know what you're deciding and what risks come with it. So what exactly is tobacco? Well, tobacco is a green leafy plant. It's grown in warm climates. And in the tobacco plant is a chemical called nicotine. And nicotine is the substance that people become addicted to. Tobacco can be smoked in a cigarette, it can be put into a pipe, or it can be chewed here. This is a can of chewing tobacco, and the user would put it in the little space between their gums and their lip. And there's actually a little bit of fiberglass in the chewing tobacco cans that just very slightly cut the inside of the lip so that the tobacco and nicotine can get into the bloodstream that way.
This report is brought to you by a grant from the Connecticut Tobacco and Health Trust Fund. In this week's report, we'll look at one of the chemicals in tobacco products that makes smoking particularly harmful to us teens. We often hear the word, but do you know what nicotine is?
I don't really know exactly what it is, but I know you're not supposed to have it, and just can really damage your body.
Nicotine is what gets you addicted to cigarettes.
Well, nicotine is a drug. It's a stimulant. It acts on your central nervous system.
Like heroin or cocaine, nicotine changes the way your brain works. It causes the body to want more and more as you continue to use nicotine. This means nicotine is addictive. But as Dr. Carroll points out, it's even more addictive if you're a teen.
Teenagers have a developing brain, and during that developmental period, you are much more likely to get addicted to things like nicotine.
To understand what being addicted to nicotine means, you need to understand what happens when your body stops getting nicotine.
So when people quit smoking, they will often experience what we call nicotine withdrawal. That is that they're used to having nicotine on board, and then when they quit smoking, their body sort of has to get used to not having nicotine. So we call this withdrawal.
When you go to withdrawal, you can get cravings. A craving is your brain causing you to want more.
So with nicotine, you get a physical craving for another cigarette.
That craving makes it hard to think about anything else. To give you an idea, we asked adults who smoked to describe what nicotine withdrawal feels like.
It was really hard.
I've quit about 3 times in the 7 years in which I've been smoking.
Enormous cravings, not just cravings for cigarettes, but cravings for food.
Most of it are food, which is not good for my diet.
Because I was getting headaches, I had anxiety, I was nervous, I biting my nails.
You can tell that they're really agitated until they get this cigarette.
I would get anxious. I was my craving was putting me I need a cigarette, I need a cigarette.
And unfortunately, these symptoms don't go away immediately.
If you're addicted to smoking, the physical cravings last for about a month. So it takes quite a long time to get unhooked from cigarettes once you're hooked.
And that means all kinds of cigarettes and tobacco products, even many e-cigarettes or vape pens, contain nicotine. For example, here's what one maker of e-cigarettes has printed on its pack. This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is addictive and habit-forming, and is very toxic by inhalation, in contact with the skin, or if swallowed. Nicotine can increase your heart rate and blood pressure and cause dizziness, nausea, and stomach pain. Inhalation of this product may aggravate existing respiratory conditions. Need I say more?
So here's an example of a nicotine model. Just to review, it's a drug. It's a stimulant, so when the user inhales on a cigarette or a vape device, they get nicotine in their bloodstream and it goes to their brain and it releases dopamine, which is the chemical that makes us feel happy. So at least for the first few moments after inhaling a nicotine product, the user is going to feel a little bit relaxed, a little bit happy, maybe a little bit more alert. But that does not last very long. In fact, oftentimes I hear that people smoke or vape to help with anxiety, and it actually can increase anxiety over time. As mentioned, it's highly addictive, and it actually changes the chemistry in the person's brain and primes their brain for future addictions of other substances as well. And it is found in tobacco products. So if nicotine is unsafe, why do you think people still choose to use products that have nicotine? Oftentimes, young people start just because they're curious and they don't really think that they'll get addicted to it. In fact, I've talked to many young people who say, yeah, I never intended on getting addicted. I just wanted to try it out. And some people are able to try it without getting addicted. The risk comes in that no one ever knows how they personally will respond to something. So when someone lights a cigarette, what exactly is burning? Well, in addition to the nicotine, there's over 4,000 chemical compounds that are created when somebody lights a cigarette. And so these are just some of the ones that are more common that you might have heard of. It releases carbon monoxide, which is the same as the gas that's released in an exhaust pipe of a car. Lead, acetone, which is the chemical in fingernail polish remover. Arsenic, which is found in rat poison. Butane, which is in lighter fluid, tar, which is what makes the lungs black. If you've ever seen the picture of a smoker lung, in fact, we're going to see a video in a minute that shows us exactly what happens to our lungs when somebody smokes over a period of time. So as you can imagine, even if a cigarette didn't have nicotine, the addictive chemical, there are a lot of really unhealthy chemicals that get into the person's body and can cause all sorts of health.
smoke, I hope this gives you the incentive to quit. And I wish you luck in your journey to quit. If you don't smoke, why would you start? And kids, if someone tries to get you to smoke, make up an excuse. Tell them that you got to help your dad, you've got to go out with your mom, or you got homework to do. Well, I hope this video has helped. If it did, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And we'll see you next time.
So as you can see, smoking puts a lot of tar into the person's lungs, and our lungs have no way to get rid of that. So they're just getting coated and saturated with that tar, in addition to all of those other chemicals that I was just mentioning. So some of the damage that smoking can do to our bodies is it can cause a variety of cancers, brain cancer, lung cancer, leukemia, stomach, kidney, pancreas, colon, bladder, and cervical cancer. It can also cause stroke and blindness and gum disease. As you can see, just all sorts of things. It can affect fertility for women who are on birth control pills. If they also smoke, it greatly increases their chance of having a stroke. So there are just a lot of good reasons why not to start. And it will be interesting to see over time how many of these same problems exist with people who vape for long periods of time. I would imagine many of them will be the same. That brings us to the end of session 3. In session 4, we will be talking about all of the health risks that come from vaping and how to make good choices with that. I also have a favor. We have started a new YouTube program called Everything You Need to Know Before Starting High School, and it's geared toward middle school students where they can ask questions about how to make a smooth transition to high school and how to have a successful experience once they get there. So if you would be interested in helping answer future questions for future episodes, you can go ahead and email me at mmaheron@nevco.org and let me know that. Since we are all home, you would need to be able to film yourself at home and then send the footage over to me. But you can check out the show to see if it's something that you'd be interested by going to YouTube and searching for Nevada County TUPE. And then you'll find a playlist called Everything You Need to Know Before Starting High School, and so you can see the videos that we have already released. I hope you're doing okay at home, and I look forward to checking in with you in our next session.